Alright, you're welcome to this video. In this video I'm going to show you how to make the top that you've seen on the thumbnail, and you can see I made it to be very neat. You can almost wear the front, the inside as the outside, and nobody will be able to tell the difference. So that's what I'm going to show you in this video. Stay tuned. Now it's time to transfer it onto my fabric. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut the center of the front. So now for me, I'm going to iron on interfacing onto my patterns before I cut. But if you want to skip this step, it's totally okay. Alright, so with that, I have completely cut the center of the front. Now if I place this pattern back on top, you will see that I added my ½ inch at the top where I placed that, where I had told you guys I would add ½ inch. So please make sure to do the same thing to the other sides. Wherever I have instructed you to add ½ inch. So like for here at the bottom, for this other part here, I would I would treat it just like I treated this one, but I won't add allowance anywhere for this. So let me cut for this, I'll be back. Alright, so I've also gone ahead to cut the back. I ironed on my interfacing and I cut my lining as well. And like I said, on the back we are not changing anything. I simply placed this onto my fabric while my fabric was on a fold, so that I can get 2 pieces for the front and for the pattern part and 2 pieces for the lining. Let's start sewing. So the first thing I'm going to do, this is the lining, and the lining was cut exactly like we cut the fabric. This is that little part that sits on the top part of the bodice. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join the neckline all the way around, consuming ½ inch. Okay, so just start sewing from here and make a U. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do, I want you to do is, after you've made the stitch around the neck like I have done, I want you to make little cuts into the neckline like so, but make sure not to break the thread. Okay, be sure not to break, as in cut through the thread. So you just put the mark of your scissors right at where you want it to stop and make a cut. I'm going to make this cut all the way around the neck, and after I make these little cuts all the way around the neck, I'm going to go ahead to stitch on both sides of the V. So I'm going to make a stitch of ½ inch to the left and ½ inch to the right, because ½ inch was what we kept. Alright, after you've made the stitch on the cuts on the neck and you've made the stitch on both sides, I want you to turn everything inside out and iron it. Alright, so after you've worked on that part, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to join fabric to fabric and lining to lining. So you see this, I'm going to join here onto here, so both sides of the bust. You see this, I'm going to join this, consuming ½ inch. Alright, so I've joined the both sides. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to just spread it and iron it, and then I will join the lining in the same way. Alright, so after creating our bodice, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to repeat that step on the lining. So like we did before, we're going to join the sides of the lining to the center, consuming ½ inch. So you see here. Alright, so I've joined both sides of the sides to the center of the lining. So the next thing I'm going to do now is we have to join this triangle onto this. Now if you had ironed this the way I did when I was sewing, you would still have a little crease. When I say crease, I mean like a fold, the fold where you excuse me, the fold where you ironed. So you see the midline. I don't know if the camera can still pick it up. There's a line here going all the way up. You want to take that line, look for that point, and you look for the center of the front, okay, and place right on that line and join them together, front facing front, okay. So you see this, I'm going to go and stitch the two of them now together to hold. Make sure the center of here is in the center of here, so that it's balanced on the front. I'll be back. Alright, so you can see with that we have attached the top part to the bodice. Now it's time for us to sew the lining onto this. But when you are sewing the top part of the lining, make sure not to start from the very beginning. So I want you to keep a space of 2 inches away from the edge. Okay, so 2 inches away from the edge, I will start to sew 1/2 inch across the top, and I will stop 2 inches before I get to the end over here. That's so that we'll be able to join the front and the back with ease later on. Alright, okay, so you can see what I was talking about. I started shortly after the side and stitched all the way down. Now we have completely attached the lining, and let's move on to the back. Alright, so now it's time to dart the back. So what you're going to do, we're going to bring up the pattern that we used to draft it, so that we can mark out the dart point. So at the end here, you are going to make a little notch so that you know where the dart falls. Okay, and then you're going to keep the top equal like so. You flip it over. So I'm putting my finger on the point that we marked where the dart was supposed to start. So when you get to that point, you make a little mark there, and then I'm going to use this to mark out the lining. After you have done that, you are going to fold and iron the points. So you're going to collapse it like so and iron it from bottom up. Just iron it down. Now I'm going to head over to my sewing machine. So from here, we're going to start at nothing, and then we'll slowly taper out to 1/2 inch by the time I hit the end. I'll do that on the fabric and on the lining. Alright, so now like I said, you can see here what I've done. Can you? Let me turn to the other side. So you can see I started from nothing. Let me see, too bright. Excuse me. Let's manage it like this. So started from nothing, and then I slowly tapered out to I started from 1/2 inch, sorry, and slowly tapered out to nothing. Did the same thing on the lining and did the same thing on this other side. The next step is to keep your lining, both of your lining aside for now, and then we're going to install our zipper. So what you are going to do, you are going to take the front of your zipper. So for me, you can see where the front is. This is the front of my zipper. I'm going to take the front and I'm going to place down like so. Just simply going to install the zip. I will try to sew as close to the edge as possible from the bottom all the way up. From the bottom, I'm going to keep a space of 1/2 inch away from the bottom. So when I want to start stitching, I'm not going to push the zipper all the way down. I will come, 1 inch away from the bottom, and then I will start to install my zip running all the way up. Now before I go, I almost forgot. So when you are placing your zipper, you take the front side of your zipper and make it face down. We're going to come 1 inch away from the bottom like I have said. But remember, when we're keeping our zipper allowance, my previous advice, I kept it close to the edge. You need to bring it 1 inch. Where your stitch would land on your zipper should be 1 inch away from the edge of your fabric. So 1 inch away from here, you install your zipper all the way up. Okay, so I'll do the same thing. I'll take the front side of the zipper. I've done this other side, so I'll take the front side of the zipper, make it face the front side of the fabric, and I will stitch my zipper all the way down, keeping 1 inch away from the edge to where my stitch is going to land. Alright, so with that, I have installed my zipper on the fabric. So we're going to separate them now, and you're going to bring the lining into the picture. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get the corresponding lining. So I'm going to take the neat part of my lining and make it fit the neat part of my fabric. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch around the neck, and I'm going to make a notch like I did in the front. So I'm going to make that notch, that stitch, and I'll be back. So after I've notched around the neck, I'm going to cut the excess zipper that I do not need, and then with that I have neatly stitched my neck. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch my armhole. But as for the armhole, I'm not going to stitch all the way, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch my armhole from here. I would stitch down like 5 inches and I would lock it there, and after that you wait for a bit. So okay, so now after you have made this stitch 5 inches down the arm from the top of the shoulder, I need you to turn everything inside out so that we can get a true idea of what's going on. Okay, so you can see this part of the back matches this side of the front. That's the side of the shoulder. It matches because the lining is facing the lining. So now that we've found the corresponding shoulder, what I want you to do is I want you to plant the front shoulder into the back. So the reason why we didn't stitch all the way is so that we have control. So what we're going to do, let me come closer. What we're going to do, so here we have the back, we have the front. It's going to be stitched together, front facing front. So you're going to place the front facing the front like so, and then I'm going to push the whole thing inside out. Excuse me. Okay, so we've turned the whole thing inside out. You can see the front is still facing the front, and then lower them together, keep the shoulders on the same level, and now I'm going to make a stitch across. Once you make a stitch across, you've joined the front and the back together at the shoulder. So let me go and make this stitch across. So after making the stitch across, if I turn, just pull here inside out, you will see we have joined the front and the back together at the shoulder. You can see this. So yeah, but before I go to the other side, let's just finish this side. So you see this part of the armhole here. So you see this part of the armhole here where I stopped 5 inches after the shoulder. We're going to continue this stitch now until we get to 2 inches before the end, and we'll stop just like what we did in front. So I'm going to stitch from here all the way 2 inches away from the edge here. I would stop and I'll be back. Alright, and then you can see I've made the stitch. I stopped 2 inches before the end. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to simply make those cuts we made at the neckline. Because this is a curve, we need it to turn inside out smoothly. Alright, so now the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to pick up the whole thing. We are going to push all of the excess out of the way, and now you see this our zipper allowance point here. So that's where the allowance we use to install our zipper. You see this? I'm now going to sew from the bottom, or if you want from the top, all the way to join them together, to join the fabric and the lining together. I'm going to make a stitch again as close to the original stitch I made when I was fixing the zip. And while I do that, my lining would be under so that I would attach the lining at the zipper point. Just do that and come back for the next. So I have made the stitch, and if I turn inside out, you would see that my lining has been joined together at the zipper allowance. Yeah, so now the next step is at the bottom here. I'm going to, from this point, that's the thread I used to attach the fabric and the lining together at the zipper point. I'm going to just stitch in all the way to my dart, just after my dart, and I would lock it there and leave that alone for now. So after the stitch, you can see shortly after my darts, I stopped making the stitch and left the ends open. If we turn everything inside out, you would see that we have created the entire back and we have joined it to the front. So now I need to iron this so that everything lays nice and smooth, and then we'll join the front to the back. We'll join this side to the front. Alright, so now after I have ironed here, everything is looking nice and smooth. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to join them together. So you see on this side here, on fabric to fabric, I'm going to hold, remember we kept 1 inch for sewing allowance, so I'm going to hold 1 inch from here all the way down to the end on the fabric alone, and then I'll show you how to handle the lining. Alright, so I have joined my fabric to fabric like I showed you. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to turn the neat side of the lining and make it face the neat side of the lining. So lining to lining, just like we did the fabric, 1 inch from top all the way down. Alright, so with that we have joined fabric to fabric and lining to lining. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open my seams and I'm going to iron them flat both on the fabric and on the lining. After I do that, I'll be back to give you further instruction. So after ironing everything, it's time to close up our holes. So you can remember on the armhole, when we're stitching, we stopped just before the end, both on the tube part, that's the front, and on the back. So if we put our hands through here, you can find that part. So you see where our stitch is stopped, the first part of the armhole and on the tube part. We're going to simply make a stitch connecting this stitch with this stitch. By the time we do that, we'll have locked our armhole completely. So let me do that. And after we complete that stitch, you will see that now our armhole is one piece. So I'm going to go ahead to repeat the same thing I've done for this side. So all of the work we've done to create this part here, I'm going to go ahead to do it for on this other side over here. And after I do that, I will come to show you how we finish off the bottom. So let me do this side. Alright, so if you've sewn it the way I've shown you, you have a top that is neat inside and out. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to turn here in the way I'm turning it in whatever I pick it from is okay. And we're going to sew fabric and lining together. You're going to keep on turning the front side of the lining, and you're going to sew until you can't sew anymore, and then you are going to stop. So I'm starting from here and I'm going to stitch all the way heading towards this other side here, okay, until when it gets difficult I will leave. Okay, with the way I've turned it, it won't get difficult. So you start to stitch from here, and when you are you see this dart here, you're going to stop here, make a lock here, and you're going to come back here, continue this stitch from here, and when you get to this joining, you stop. You're going to turn everything inside out through the hole that you will leave here. If you stop here and stop here, you should have a 5-inch gap here, and that should be more than enough to bring everything out. So turn it inside the way I've done and do that. Stitch from here to here. Alright, so now we're going to pass from here and turn everything inside out. Alright, and I'm going to iron it. So you see this small hole that we have here, I'm going to use my hemming gun to iron it in. Alright, okay, so now it's time to iron here short. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little hemming gun, I'm going to wet the place I intend to iron a bit so that it doesn't burn, because my iron is crazy. Then I'm going to simply tuck this in here. I've locked that part, and now we don't have any seams that will show where we turned the inside out from. Alright, so after I do this, I'm done. If you've watched this far, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.